All right. Thank you so much, Jana. Does that sound good in the back? Okay, cool. Well, guys, once again, shout out to town of Frisco. We get to come up here 3 times this summer. We were here for Frisco Day, Historic Day on July 6th, around the corner. We're here today, and then on Friday, August 16th, here, right, Jana? We're going to do it again in the gazebo. We're having it's okay. I'm like, where'd the blue hair go? A program on owls and talking a little bit about nocturnal migration of non-owl, non-raptor birds. So you're in for a really fun, kind of crazy, interesting program because we're going to talk about the very ancient art and sport of falconry. Our organization, we are not falconers. It's very confusing, but the technology and the gear and the species overlap. I am a falconer, but our organization is the Raptor Education Foundation. For those of you that haven't seen us at Dillon or Beaver Creek or 3 weeks ago, we're based down in Brighton, right near Bar Lake State Park. And in September, we are going to begin our 45th year of operations. So we are actually the oldest environmental nonprofit in the state of Colorado that works with live animals and isn't municipally supported like the Denver Zoo or the Museum of Nature and Science. The gentleman with the camera and the cap hat is our founder, Peter. He tried to retire. I didn't let him go. So I've been officially president for 4 years, right when COVID hit. Yay! My first year was awesome with no public programs. But anyway, we're back. We're doing things all over the place. We are pretty regular Summit and especially Eagle County, Vail Valley visitors. We were the first group to exhibit at Stock Show back in, 1982, 83. If there has been a great beloved long-running public event in Colorado, I can guarantee you that at some point we have been there. We have traveled nationally. We have been to Alaska twice. We mostly now drive out of state, and what we do is we take care of, depending on the year, about 24 up to 30 raptors, injured and non-releasable. We do not take in or rehabilitate birds ourselves. There are other groups that do that. I work closely with rehabilitators all over the country because the sad fact is, in some cases, greater than 50% of raptors admitted in any given year, depending on the rehab center across the country, they're not going to be releasable. These guys are predators, and if they cannot see and fly perfectly, they're not going to be able to feed themselves. And then the federal and state laws dictate that they either need to be placed, if they're suitable, with an educational organization where they can either be on display to the public or like us, where they are actually taken and worked on the fist at various locations. If they cannot find a permanent home, they are euthanized. Those are the rules. So it jointly takes a licensed wildlife rehabilitator along with a veterinarian to decide whether or not a bird is releasable or not. Then a whole bunch of paperwork consumes. So about 90% of our birds come from the wild. Actually, only one bird that you're going to see here today came from the wild. The other 3 are former falconry birds, and we do have one, whom you're going to meet first, who was specifically bred to be an educational bird. So falconry. Falconry has been practiced, we now know for sure, because of archaeological evidence, for at least 5,000 years. The oldest sort of evidence that we have is a shard of pottery in what is now modern-day Iraq, dating to about 1000 BC. And I know the modern parlance is BCE, before current era, but as you can tell, I'm too old to do that. So it's going to be way easier for me to just go BC and AD. So yeah, that is the earliest evidence. I'm going to get back to the history of falconry in a second, but first of all, I want you to make sure you understand what birds are used in falconry. Raptors, sometimes people use the term birds of prey. It's different depending on what language we're speaking, but it involves eagles, hawks, falcons, owls, vultures, condors, kites, and osprey. Those are raptors. Not all of those groups that I just rattled off are suitable for use in falconry, unless you want to catch dead crows on the side of the road, or, you know, long dead remnants of beef jerky antelope in Wyoming. You don't want to be flying a vulture, okay? But eagles, hawks, falcons, owls, vultures, condors, kites, and osprey are what we call modern day raptors. So you got to have two things to be a raptor. First of all raptors, the vultures are somewhat of an evolved exception, but raptors have very strong feet with long, sharp claws that we call talons on the ends of their toes. Lions, wolves, bears have claws. Raptors have talons. And this is what they use to seize the prey, or the little animals that are their food. The second thing raptors have is this very strongly curved or hooked beak, which is used to tear off bits of meat small enough to swallow. Because think about it. If we see an osprey catch a fish out here on the lake, is he or she going to swallow it whole? No, not unless it's a really, really tiny one, you know. Maybe down in Denver, I live and drive near the South Platte, and I've definitely seen some osprey, you know, fish head pointed this direction, carrying some small trout that they could swallow whole. When a red-tailed hawk catches a prairie dog down where we live, is he or she going to chew it before they swallow? No. Do birds even have any teeth? No. No living birds have teeth. That is why they need that sharp beak, just to make the big fish into manageable pieces. And by the way, no living birds have teeth because teeth are heavy. We know a whole lot more about the fossil record and the evolution of bipedal theropods into birds. Bipedal theropods, aka T-Rex, Velociraptor. Because if you think about it, we now know that velociraptors had feathers, and Archaeopteryx, the very first fossilized proto-bird, Archaeopteryx had teeth. And as these proto-birds, these avian dinosaurs, early birds, started jumping from trees like flying squirrels and gliding, it suddenly became all about weight. So they got rid of teeth because teeth are heavy. Anyway, so talons, beak, as opposed to other meat-eating birds. Herons, gulls, storks, magpies, ravens, roadrunners, cranes. All of those guys eat meat, but they have that long, straight, sharp, or very stout, like a raven, hammering and pecking beak. They don't have the gripping feet. So let's meet our first bird. I got to remember in my head that I'm doing a whole way different form of talking here today. So Bev, hold him up and face him into the wind. As I said, yeah. This poor bird only weighs 22 ounces. So he doesn't want, and they don't like it coming over their tail. Okay, you guys, this is a Harris hawk. And the reason we're using the Harris hawk today is that this is America's great falconry export to the rest of the world. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Harris hawks first. Not native, thank you, Bev, to Colorado, but they are found in the desert Southwest, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico. They're found down in the nation of Mexico, past the Panama Canal, and even into South America. In Peru, in downtown Lima, these guys nest in palm trees. And the Peruvian Harris hawks are a little bit smaller than the ones we have in the Sonoran Desert. So if anybody's ever been to Arizona, the Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tucson area, the Sonoran Desert, that's the cactus with the big arms, the saguaros, you know, that is where Harris hawks live and breed and hunt when they are not wintering by the Costco where my parents live in Tucson. Anyway, okay there, Bev, you can pull them down a little bit. The thing that makes Harris hawks so cool, you guys, is that they are social, which is extremely rare in raptors. These guys live in small family groups like a pride of lions or a pack of wolves, groups of 5 to 8 individuals. And they also are shaped kind of like a red-tailed hawk and kind of like a goshawk or a Cooper's hawk or the forest hawks that we have. This is the original hybrid. Long, broad wings for soaring, and that long white tail with the black tail with the white tip is used as a rudder. Just like a cheetah uses its tail to make very sharp turns. The way goshawks up here can fly through the trees, or if you're here or even down in Denver, if you have ever seen what you thought was a hawk, you couldn't tell because it was moving so fast, zip into your yard and grab a bird off your bird feeder or your bird bath and keep on going, that's a Cooper's hawk. They live in the forest here in Colorado, and they have a long tail as well. These guys zigzag through cactus and palo verde and ocotillo and everything else in the desert that is going to stab and bite you. 22 ounces, I said. What do they hunt? Well, anything from a tarantula or scorpion up to the antelope jackrabbit, which can weigh 11 or 12 pounds. How on earth do they do that? Well, they work together. So one of the things you have to remember, because this goes all into the vocabulary of falconry as well. Your vocabulary for the word for the day, ladies and gentlemen, is the word tiercel. Tiercel. What from the Latin terce or three, because the tiercel, which is what we call a male raptor, if you're a real purist, a tiercel is only a male peregrine falcon, but we're going to use it to do all males, is 1/3 smaller than the female. So he weighs 22 ounces. If he were 5 years old and in his prime and an Olympic gymnast, you know, and living out in the wild, he might be 25, 26 ounces. A big female, 42, 44 ounces, you know. A big one, average more 30 to 32. So, jackrabbit, he and his bros are flying very low through the desert, and they spot a jackrabbit. They fly after it. If it runs under a bush or runs in between rocks, they will get on the ground and chase it. Okay, is that where you're going to be? Okay, whoever she belongs to, she kind of needs to stay seated if possible. Okay, gets the jackrabbit or even a big cottontail moving until there's no more cover, there's no more holes. Finally, that jackrabbit just gives up and breaks. If you guys have never seen a jackrabbit run, it's like a pronghorn antelope. Jackrabbits have golden eyes, they're hares. Really. And they're magnificent animals. The antelope jackrabbit, to dissipate that desert heat, has ears like this, and they lay down their back and they just go. They are like miniature deer. Okay, they're out in the open. Well, here come the girls. 2, 3, waiting overhead to just pile and slam onto the rabbit once it is free of cover. It's like lionesses taking down a zebra. And then they all share in the kill. That sounds very spectacular. What makes Harris hawks so great for falconry is because they are social and they like working with people. They like working with other hawks. It's something they kind of do naturally. They just really don't like dogs. Most of what they hunt, of course, are mice, mammals, ground squirrel, quail. They are excellent for catching quail, especially these guys since they're so maneuverable. And then, of course, the females can just about catch any mammal that gets up underneath them. So they're very popular for rabbits and even hares overseas. So because these guys get along so well with people, they are easy to train and they have become extraordinarily popular all over the world. The very first evidence that Harris hawks were used in falconry was actually, I'm going to forget the year, it was in the 30s, the original Robin Hood film. He sees a dog. Thank you, sir, right on cue. With Basil Rathbone and Olivia de Havilland and Errol Flynn. You guys remember that? Robin Hood? A few of you, yeah. They have to have the obligatory, you know, medieval Renaissance falconry scene, and they had a Harris hawk. You guys need to remember that falconry did not really come to the United States until after World War I. And I'll tell you some of the very earliest evidence of falconry in this country. And it was weirdos who had been in England or people that, you know, practiced ancient pursuits, didn't want to use the newfangled telephone or radio. By our very nature, we are an archaic group of people that like to do things the hard way and the way they did it 3,000 years ago. That's just kind of our mentality. So of course, since falconry originated in the old world and we're thinking Central Asia, nobody had tried doing it in the United States until basically the early 1900s, post-World War I. they found this funny looking bare-faced, paddle-winged, long-tailed hawk that looked nothing like they were flying in Europe. And oh my gosh, it took off. Literally now in the United States, if you go to any five-star resort, like down at the Broadmoor, my friend runs the Falconry program there, or Busch Gardens, or a zoo, any little falconry castle in Ireland, any birds of prey center in the UK, Scotland, a big old place in Germany, Slovakia, they are going to have a flying show doing spectacular things, and they're going to have Harris hawks. It is now changed, but literally the Falconry Club based on the island of Malta. Did they have a Maltese falcon? No, they had a guy flying a Harris hawk overlooking the Mediterranean. This is the Simpsons of falconry. Everybody has them. Everybody learns to fly them. Everybody breeds them. Problem is, as we've explained, they are tropical desert birds. So those poor Harris hawks that got dragged to the UK right after World War II in that cold, dank climate, frostbite. So we know how to fight that as well, too. Anyway, this bird, this Harris hawk, is actually 30 years old. And he doubled his normal wild lifespan. We know his age. He turned 30 on May 29 because he was actually captive bred for flying programs that we used to do by the world's leading Harris hawk researchers. So Bev, I'm going to let you put him back. At least the wind will be facing the right way. Actually, super quick, stand right here for just a second. He's molting right now, you guys. We're going to turn him around so you can see his tail. You see how this, I know, buddy. See how this tail feather is a little shorter and the white is up here? So it's summer. They're dropping the old feathers and growing new ones. This feather has blood down the central shaft, which supplies nutrients to the growing feather. As soon as it hits this length, the blood recedes up the shaft back into the bird's body, and we call this tail feather hard penned, meaning it's hard and you could use it as a pen if you needed to. Anyway, thank you, Bev. So he was bred by the world's leading Harris hawk researchers, Dr. Jennifer and Tom Colson in Louisiana. He was raised by his parents with his siblings in a big old barn, but he has seen people and been handled by them since day one. So as I said, he pretty much loves everybody except dogs. And to my point that I'm going to constantly emphasize, in this country, our knowledge about wild raptors has been 100% driven by falconers. Dr. Jennifer, the wife of the couple, has for years been the head of Orleans Audubon, and she's served on the board of the Raptor Research Foundation, which is the world's preeminent scientific body dedicated to the research of raptors all over the world. Anyway, we needed him to fly, obviously. We didn't want him injured, and we wanted him comfortable with people and knowing who he was so he didn't attack somebody's fuzzy purse or, something like that. Anyway, going back to falconry real quick, I said it probably got its origins in Central Asia. We really don't know. There's all sorts of hypotheses as to how falconry started, but just as humankind had tamed the dog and tamed the horse, what we think happened is somebody scrounging to feed his family in what is now probably Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, happened to see a saker falcon, which is a very big, large desert Asian falcon, catch something on the ground, maybe a duck or a hare right there in front of them. And he went, oh my gosh, cool. And he ran up and stole the quarry from the falcon. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and he saw whatever. Probably went back, talked to the men of his tribe, and said, if we could grab one of these, we've trained the hawk, or the hound, we've trained the horse. Maybe we could figure out how to get these guys to hunt for us. So, ancient Mongolia, ancient China, ancient Japan. I didn't bring a bell. I'll talk about bells. The Chinese were probably the first nation to put bells on falcons and hawks so we could hear them if they flew away. Philip of Macedonia, who was the father of Alexander the Great, is credited with bringing falconry from Central East Asia into Greece and what eventually became the Roman Empire and the Roman domain. The ancient Egyptians worshipped falcons, but they did not practice falconry. So again, going back to the great old movies, the Ten Commandments, before Moses discovers who he is and when he is still with Pharaoh and his brother, there is a scene with hooded peregrine falcons on the back of the Pharaoh's chariot, and whoosh, off goes the chariot. Falcons almost fall off. Ancient Egyptians did not practice falconry. All right, Bev, we are ready. So hold that thought. We're kind of in the Roman time frame now. So I wanted to bring this bird because this is the only non-native or, quote, exotic raptor we care for. And she was very heavily used in falconry in Asia and Europe. This is a Eurasian or a common kestrel. So for any of you that are bird watchers and thinking, that is the biggest kestrel I've ever seen, that's because she's double the size of our native North American kestrel. So kestrel is derived from an old French word, cresserelle, which has to do with sort of the bell-like or musical quality of their call. She's kind of loud like a trumpet. Our little native 4-ounce kestrel is great, but we're all deaf from having her scream in our ear. Kestrels are falcons. You'll see that she's got a very long tail and long wings. Kestrels have extremely long tails because they use them to hover, but they have short toes. They don't have the long toes of even the next size up in this country, the merlin or the peregrine or the prairie falcon or the gyr falcon or the saker falcon, the big species that were traditionally used, except for the prairie, in falconry. Kestrels by their natures have short, chubby toes. Our native kestrel weighs 4 ounces. She weighs closer to 8 or 9. So they are found in Scandinavia, in the UK, Central Europe, into probably about the middle of Africa, the Middle East, India, all throughout Europe. They have a very, very wide distribution. The one thing they don't have so much are the dark mailer stripes that you see underneath the eyes of falcons. You're going to meet another falcon in a little bit and it will be very obvious. Our American kestrel has 2 black stripes, both sexes, one in front, one in back. So it works the same way as black grease paint underneath the eyes of football players and baseball players, or tape. It helps cut down on the glare from the sun. In circumstances where you can't wear sunglasses and you want to catch that pop fly to center field or that perfect touchdown pass, having a whole bunch of stuff here means you can see better. So if you were in the Western medieval European courts, say from even before the Norman conquest up until basically the 15 or 1600s, and you were anybody basically above the peasantry, minor nobility, aristocracy, you absolutely had to learn falconry, men and women both. Over in Europe, the very smallest species of falcon is the merlin. Here in the United States, the merlin is our second smallest species. Because remember, 4-ounce kestrel, merlin. In Europe, it's the other way around. Merlin, 8-ounce kestrel. So merlins were often reserved for ladies, because apparently they thought we could not hold anything bigger than about 6 ounces. You will hear stories, anecdotal, apocryphal, whatever, that certain priests in certain parishes were annoyed because the nuns had the temerity to bring their merlins to church with them and vespers because it was a good way to train them. Young ladies and gentlemen would learn on this. This is the bird that most of the wealthy landed classes would learn because kestrels are cavity nesters. They do it here, they do it overseas. They have been nesting in the bases of medieval fortresses, the bell towers of cathedrals, and arrow holes, loose stones in castles for thousands of years. Therefore, it was very easy to get to their eggs and find them. They also train down very easily, and what you really would do with a kestrel is train it to chase a lure, and I will show you that in a little bit. I don't want to do it in front of her because it's actually, I have two. It's her lure, and she's going to say, "What? We back to flying again?" If you take a walking tour in Rome, birds of Rome, boom, there's a kestrel. I've seen them in Barcelona. I've seen them in Salzburg. I saw one in Edinburgh. Where you will see them. If you go to Europe, keep your eyes up. Just don't do it while you're crossing the street, okay? And you will see these guys, especially with the young men who were learning to be squires and eventually knights. One of the things they would be in charge of is their masters, their knights, falcons, and they had to learn on this. So why do we have her? Well, she's 11 years old, and she was actually captive bred here in the United States. There was a big falconry center in England that was going to merge with a center in North Carolina. It did not go well. I think there was a soured romantic relationship involved. So everything split and a bunch of birds stayed behind. This bird is very rare in this country. And let me tell you what happened. Few pairs came in the 70s, and all of us falconers said, "Cool, it's like our kestrel, but bigger. Well, maybe we could catch, doves more regularly, pigeons more regularly, not just sparrows and starlings and things like that." Evolution. Here in the United States, our little 4-ounce kestrel, which I totally think should be our state bird. Anybody know what the state bird of Colorado is? The lark bunting. Does it stay in Colorado in the winter? No, it does not. Our little 4-ounce kestrel stays here year-round. How these guys hunt out in the plains after a blizzard is beyond me. So our kestrels eat about 1/3 birds, 1/3 mammals, and then the remainder are insects and reptiles. And we all know what happens to the insects and reptiles when the winter comes. This is a bird smaller than this, and it stays here year-round. So they see this bird and think, aha, well, 95% of the common kestrel's diet in northern England, up next to the Scottish border, is the European pine vole. That's it. That is all they want to eat. They do not catch starlings. They do not hunt lizards and snakes. There are very few reptiles. And they don't have to worry about prairie falcons chasing after them, red-tailed hawks chasing after them. We have way more peregrines here than they have that part of England. So you know what happens with these guys? They come to this country, they are difficult to train, they don't want to chase starlings, and then they get killed by wild raptors, which is always a risk when you're flying. So she was actually bought by a gal who wanted to fly her. She didn't work out. She moved to North Dakota, which was way too cold to go to medical school, so she donated her to us. So we feel very lucky to have her. She's fun to look at. She's a little bit bigger than a native kestrel. One last thing to tell you. I told you about the differences between the sexes in size. In about 10 or so raptors in the US, there's also a color difference, including in the kestrels. So Bev, can we turn her around for just a second? I think, why don't you stand up properly, girl? Thank you. The male Eurasian kestrel is going to have this beautiful bluish gray color straight down in a single black band, okay? She looks very much like our native American kestrel female. Her tail should be a little bit more rust than it is. You're being so good. Our native male American kestrel has beautiful gray wings. They're gray and they're black and they're rust and a little bit of white. They're absolutely beautiful. And they're the size of robins. So whenever you go down the flatlands, thank you, Bev. Keep your eye out for them. All right, let's get back to falconry. The birds that are used in falconry, really, hawks, falcons, eagles. Let me tell you what falconry is and is not. Falconry is hunting. Period, end of sentence, game over. Falconry is not what you see here. Falconry is not standing around in a costume at a Renaissance festival. Falconry is not flying a falcon to chase away gulls and other birds at an airport that, God forbid, might bring down an aircraft. Falconry is not flying a Harris hawk or an Oplomado falcon to keep starlings and other pest birds off of your vineyard or off your blueberry crop, or pigeons away from your resort hotel. Those people are falconers, but they have a different type of permit and they use falconry technique, but that's abatement. They're trying non-lethal ways to remove pest birds away from areas where we don't want a whole bunch of bird poop, or we don't want collisions, life safety, kind of thing. Falconry is hunting. So I am licensed by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. The overseeing and management of our permits is done through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because there are very few disciplines or categories of people in the United States, citizens, that get to take animals out of the wild and not kill them and actually possess them. You shoot an elk, the elk is dead, tag is filled, boom, it's in the freezer. And whether that's a mountain lion or a duck, that is the way the North American model of wildlife management works. And we have Teddy Roosevelt to thank for that. He's the one that ended the slaughter of herons and egrets because they're being killed for their plumes. And billions of, millions of pintail ducks being killed by private citizens and then sold as a profit for restaurants and stuff. Teddy Roosevelt said, nuh-uh, wildlife belongs to all the citizens of the United States, not just the people that happen to live here in Louisiana and are living off the land. So that's how the Migratory Bird Treaty Act came involved. That's why raptors are protected today. That is why the bald eagle is never used in falconry in the United States. It is our national symbol, and yet we are the only nation on earth that cannot use them for falconry. They are bred by my friend in Scotland, by a huge center in the Netherlands. You see them flying at castles and at schools in Slovakia. You may not use any species of kite, any osprey, or any bald eagle for falconry, i.e. hunting, in the United States. You can use golden eagles. It's a little bit more complicated. We developed a licensing system so that people would know what they were doing when we took birds out of the wild. Here in the United States, and falconry is legal in every state except for Hawaii, we are allowed to take certain species out of the wild at certain times a year, at certain apprentice, or I should say licensed classes, using certain types of traps. It's very, very heavily regulated. Why do we take birds out of the wild? Well, they know that they're birds, they are already hunting, and if we don't hand raise them, they won't scream for us for food constantly, nonstop, every time they see us. Now we're getting into some of the esoterics of how you breed and raise a puppy, and how you breed and raise horses and Amazon parrots and stuff like that. The other thing you guys need to realize is if falconer here in Colorado or anywhere traps a young or immature red-tailed hawk out of the wild in October or so, he or she is likely saving that bird's life, because 70, 80%, depending on where in the United States you live and what species of bird you're talking about, 70 to 80% of them will not live to see their first birthday. They're going to die before they reach 1 year of age. Some of them are going to make mistakes, learning how to hunt and get clobbered by a car or a fence. Most of them will just starve to death. Back to what happens to the insects and the reptiles in the winter. Red-tailed hawks down in Brighton, they were out on the nest, running around, flying, by June. Grasshoppers are an excellent first prey for both young kestrels and young red-tailed hawks to learn how to pounce and hunt. But oh gosh, those guys better switch to mice come the first snow, or they're gonna starve. So there's all kinds of archaic terms associated with falconry. If you hear a falconer talk ever, they're not going to say immature, they might say passage. Oh, I trapped a passage Merlin, but I'm going to release her in the spring. Passage meaning on the first passage, on the first migration, coming from somewhere else, not yet a year old. I'm going to trap them, I'm going to train them, I'm going to fly them, I'm going to hunt with them, and then boom, I'm going to release them the next year. And that is how a lot of traditional falconry happened. You never took adult birds, they were too set in their way. So the straps attached to the bird's legs, those are called jesses. little anklets that the jesses go through. We have Major Guy Almery of the French Air Force to thank for that. These are called Almery jesses, which the Fish and Wildlife now required. Traditionally, it was just one piece. It was woven by a piece of leather around the bird's leg, and then you would hold the strap in your hand. Major Almery figured out, well, let's use this grommet. Let's do a little cuff and a jess that can be pulled out. So now if your bird escapes, if your bird flies away, if your bird says, I'm out of here, they will not be saddled with a strap hanging down that could get caught in a tree, caught on a fence, something like that. And that is required in all of the 49 states that allow falconry. It just twists and turns much better. It doesn't get stuck. When we go out into the field with a bird, we got to take a whole lot of gear with us. First of all, our glove. This is my personal glove. It's a little bit shorter than the ones we would use for education use. A lot of people traditionally use bags, like something you would just sling over your shoulder. Now we use this vest. I feel like a Marine going on a hike here. Everything I would possibly need. A keeper for my hood. I will explain that in a minute. Hemostats for cactus. Yay. Someplace to put in the back. Whatever I catch. This is a lot easier to work with, and I can run. Spare jess or two. The hood. Hood, hat, helmet. Everybody throws these different H words at me. If raptors cannot see, for the most part, they will not move. They are such visually oriented creatures. They see in color. They obviously see much better than we do. You put a hood over the bird's head, it stays calm. For training, it is almost mandatory, especially if they come from the wild. There's just too much sensory overload, but they listen. This is what the glove feels like. This is what this person's voice feels like. This is what the scale sounds like when I'm put on it. And it really, really helps. The Japanese and Chinese used to just use sort of a black silk little hood, a cap all the way over that would be a drawstring. Eventually, some cultures moved to leather. This is what we call a Dutch design. There were entire towns in what is modern-day Holland, the Netherlands, dedicated to the gear of producing falconry, for producing things for falconry. Traps, hoods, jesses, perches. So we call this a Dutch design to this day. And it's hard to demonstrate without the bird on my hand, but just pretend this is the little beak. This is driving me crazy. This is the bird's beak. It goes over like this, and then with my teeth, I shut it. Every hood is specifically designed for the gender and the species of the bird that we're flying. But of course, there's still individual variations. Some women are 5'2", some women are 5'11". So if you get a really big female Harris hawk, the standard female Harris hood may not work. And then when you unhood it, you pull the short ones, and off you go. Gore-Tex. There's several amazing, awesome things about modern falconry. Traditionally, the braces would be made of leather. They get sticky and lock up in the rain. Gore-Tex, not so much. Anyway, how does falconry work? Why do the birds stick around? They don't fly away because they learn that if they either come back to you or still stay near you, you are going to feed them, or you are going to produce an opportunity for them to be fed. Harris hawks love, and red-tailed hawks too, love to follow from tree to tree to tree. So put the bird up in the tree, walk. Tree line, you know, a fence row, something like that. Out in the plains, let's walk, walk, walk. The hawk has a little bit of height advantage. You flush a rabbit with your feet, boom, out goes the hawk. Or maybe, unexpectedly, a pheasant gets up. And if you're flying a fast enough bird, he or she might get it. Oh, they missed the pheasant. The pheasant pulled off this way. Where's the hawk going? They come back to your glove for food. Not, oh, that's a good hawk. Oh, good hawk. Food. Let's not have any illusions here. They come back for food to the glove. Okay, bud. Let's keep on walking. Oh, you want to go up in the tree again? Oh, okay. If you're not careful, they will train you. Anybody ever had a dog or a horse train them before they even realized what was going on? Yes, that is what happened. They don't bring it back. A rabbit might weigh 3 pounds. The hawk is going to weigh less than that in many cases. They kill it. You got to find them where it falls. Hopefully, it is not too far away. If it is very far away, traditionally we would put bells on the bird's legs so we could hear them, wrestling in the ground, pulling the fur, pulling off the feathers, and that makes noise. You follow the sounds of the bells. Indian Pakistani bells were traditionally some of the very best. Half a tone apart, they carry beautifully. Nowadays, we use radio telemetry. Okay, here comes the big experiment. Huh? Say what? Okay. This is the big experiment with the microphones. So, anybody remember the original Wild Kingdom? Marlon Perkins and Jim. Jim's going up the hill. Here, Jim. The 3-strand Yagi approach telemetry was invented in the United States. American falconers were the first ones to figure out we should put one of these radio transmitters on our hawk so when they go out of sight or around the corner, we can actually find them. And what I'm showing you here is actually not even the latest and greatest. So we used to put the telemetry on the bird's legs. We can still do that. We now, and they do this in research too, also put it on their back with very, very thin Dacron backpack harness straps and worn right here. Or we can clip it to their tail. So I'm going to show you real quickly and then we're going to get on to our next bird. I fly a hybrid falcon. That's a long story. You can ask about it later. And I've got a little tiny metal clip here that is made from machined aircraft aluminum. This is his central tail feather. And then what I do is I clip this, I think 3 or 4 gram transmitter. It's got a battery in it, a 1225 gap battery right in here. Now it's hanging. And in the old days, we'd have to unscrew a cap, stick in like a coin or a little calculator battery, and then boom, it would start going. Now, it is activated with a magnet. And the closer I am, the louder the signal is. I can actually attenuate the signal. Let's turn it. Now it's very close. And it sounds the same. The point is if I have no idea where he is and I saw him head for the horizon, I will put it on high so I can actually hear it. And then I turn it down the louder and the louder it gets so I can triangulate. The only thing I have to remember in my old age is to actually remember to turn the thing off. Okay. This is actually a miniature receiver as well, but this is what we would carry and then wave, where is it? So a friend of mine used to say when we used to do classes at the Parks and Wildlife together for the new district wildlife managers, if you get a call about somebody doing something weird and there's a bird involved acting crazy, I can guarantee you it's a falconer, this type of thing. Okay, so that looks pretty slick. And I can carry this with me and I can eventually track down my bird, hopefully. I still put a bell on him just in case because there's all kinds of things that can interfere with the signal. And as I was telling AJ earlier, the best thing now is about 11 years ago, they figured out how to miniaturize GPS. I'm not used to doing this one hand. Come on, bud. We're going to just leave this and move this on.
That'll help you find him, and then he'll come to you.
Yeah, our one state next door, Utah, Marshall Radio, finest telemetry in the world. That transmitter now has a miniaturized GPS locator overlaid on Google Earth and a speedometer and an altimeter. No more fish stories. My falcon was 2,000 feet up in the air. I bet it was going 200 miles an hour. You grab your iPhone or your phone, whatever, and say, no, actually your maximum altitude was 1,200 feet or 890 feet. Maximum velocity was 132 miles an hour. And oh, by the way, it's 524 feet away that way. No bells. It's amazing. It is almost impossible to lose your bird anymore. Worst case, if you don't have access to the telemetry, you don't know where it is, what the falcon will come back to, sir. 1 minute, Bev, is the lure. Falcon's lure and cure. Shakespeare, all the medieval Renaissance literature is filled with falconry terms. This is a lure. It is a heavy bag shaped sort of like a dove, meant to simulate prey. It is irresistible, usually, to falcons, and hawks like it too. If they won't come down to that little tidbit on the glove, you throw this, boom. I've had birds come in from nearly a mile away when they see that. That's what they'll come back to that, not a dumb little tidbit on the glove. So speaking of lures and falcons that like them, Beverly. Might be an interesting experiment here. See if you still recognize this. This is a 4-year-old male, Tiercel, peregrine falcon. He did fly in falconry for 1 year, and he was donated to us by a falconer in Billings, Montana. Because in Montana, it is very cold. And if you want to fly a falcon in Montana, you need to fly a female. Because duck season lasts 5 minutes. First frost, ponds freeze, the ducks move on. And the female's bigger than the male. And most of what's in Montana, if there are no ducks, are sage grouse, sharp-tailed grouse, prairie chickens, things like that. So he was donated to us when his falconer had an opportunity to trap a larger bird. This is the classic bird of falconry. Look how much longer the bird's toes are. So we talked a little bit about how falcons hunt, things like that. I'm going to tell you in the wild, I'm going to tell you how it works with falconry. I see ducks on a pond. I want to hunt a duck, and hopefully there's a few teal or smaller duck, not necessarily a big, huge drake mallard. He weighs the same amount as the Harris hawk, actually, 22, 23 ounces. Big Tiercel, maybe 25. Quietly, half mile, maybe even more out of sight, I'm going to hold my falcon and put him up. He's going to go. He's going to go, and he's going to start flying and ringing up. That's what we call it, up, up, up. And he will go over the pond. Or if there's no pond and you're hunting grouse, the falcon will stay over you or even over a dog. We had a beautiful, I think, German short hair pointer here earlier. We use those. If we're hunting pheasants or grouse and not ducks, hopefully your dog is on point. You've been walking and walking, your dog is on point. Your dog, there's something there, and hopefully it's not false scent. You go back to your truck, you put your falcon up, you start walking back to your dog. The falcon follows you. The falcon gets over the dog. You now have two animals in the field, hoping they both obey. And at the right moment, flush the grouse, off goes the grouse or the duck. And then the falcon folds its wings and plummets like a stone. They'll usually turn over, do a couple dives to get going, and then it's just, whew. The fastest swoop I've seen is 144 miles per hour. Most of them go 110, 120. They take those long toes for something big. They ball them up into a fist. This is my grouse. They knock it right out of the sky. If we're lucky and it's a perfect pitch and really fast, an experienced bird, we call it knocked it dead in the stoop. The bird is dead before it hits the ground. That's the ideal. Mostly the bird is stunned. Hits the ground, the falcon follows it down, grabs it, and then all falcons, even kestrels that don't hunt this way, have a stair step or notch in their upper and their lower beak, used to sever the spinal cord of what they've just knocked out of the... I'm sorry, am I giving you the willies? A little too graphic? But it's so darn cute, because you'll see this little American kestrel drop off a wire into a ditch, And it has its mouse, and it goes like it's a big peregrine, and it bites the mouse. It does the same thing instinctively, even though mammal necks and bird necks are completely different. That is how a 2-pound female peregrine falcon can kill a Canada goose. That is how Henry VIII almost drowned. Because what they used to do back then is they would heron hawk, as they call it, which is the other confusing thing about falconry. It doesn't matter if you're flying a hawk, a falcon, or an eagle. You're going hawking. You're not going falconing, you're going hawking. He was a big man by the end of his reign, and his favorite peregrine had taken down a great blue heron who had sought refuge in the slough. And absolutely in those days, I mean, herons are huge with that big beak. The falcon would hang on, but then the assistants and all the minions would have to come up and actually dispatch the heron. Well, he waded in so his falcon wouldn't drown and got so waterlogged that it took many, many men to get him out. He almost died. All the famous monarchs we can think of were falconers. His daughter, Queen Elizabeth, Mary Queen of Scots, Richard I, everybody flew falcons. It was just one of those things, swordsmanship, embroidery for the ladies, dancing for both sexes that you do. So, as I said, peregrines are exceptionally good at this. They like to go up in the sky. They are very aerial birds. The largest species of falcon in the world is the gyrfalcon, Gyrfalcon. One word, and they've combined the word falcon. The word Merlin, that's also a falcon, but you don't say Merlin falcon. That would be like saying a Chevrolet car. Everybody understands a Chevrolet is a car. Anyway, the gyrfalcon is much bigger than this guy. A female can weigh 60 ounces up to. Males are 35 to 40. But they live in the Arctic. And if you're going to live in the Arctic and survive, you have to eat anything that moves. The remains of brown trout have been found in gyrfalcon eyries. And an eyrie is a nesting ledge where falcons live. They don't build nests in most places in the world. They just find a cave or a shelf and tuck their eggs into there. Young Arctic foxes, any kind of bird, including peregrine falcons, ptarmigan, plovers, all kinds of geese. That is what gyrfalcons hunt. You can train them to go up like a peregrine does. They would rather just chase it like a merlin does. They literally would rather just chase it like a wolf across the tundra, across the strait, across countries until it drops dead of exhaustion. You can train them to go up. Peregrines just do it naturally. Hey, buddy. Turn him around, Bev. Face the wind. So come stand up. There we go. Hi, buddy. All right. There we go. Hi. Go ahead and back up that way. We might get a head bob here, and then we need to move on to our next bird. Hi, bud. Oh, yeah. Who's that? He says, I don't care. That's because he's fat. I'm fed up. You're done. Falconry term. Bird that is fed up has eaten. It's not going to come to you. He's got her wrapped around his little finger. Beverly is wrapping the leash around her finger, meaning she has that bird, or her daddy, under control. Oh, he's an old codger. When you were too old to actually ride the horse or man the dogs or go chase down the game, an elderly man would hold this perch called the cadge that had falcons here, and falcon. And that was the guy that would take the bird out into the field. Caddy golf comes from that today. I could go on and on. All righty, we need to meet our next bird. I'm having too much fun talking about my favorite thing. So I am a master falconer. I became licensed in California in 1984. We follow the ancient medieval sort of apprenticeship, learning a skill formula. Instead of being apprentice journeyman master, it's apprentice general master. An apprentice falconer has to have a sponsor, somebody that signs their license and teaches them what to do for at least 2 years. Years 3, 4, and 5, you are a general falconer. You're allowed to have 2 birds now, not just 1. In year 8, 3, 4, 5 years as a general, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Year 8, you become a master falconer. The word master falconer is the most oxymoronic term ever. Like you ever master this sport. I don't think you're even allowed to be considered a master of Japanese sword making until you've been doing it for at least 35 years. And honestly, that's how long it takes. Every bird is different. Every situation is different. And Peter's now going to bring in, if the wind isn't too bad, whenever you're ready, Peter, one of the oldest species of raptors used in falconry, still used in pretty much the same way today. This is a golden eagle. This is the smallest of the 4 eagles we care for at the Raptor Education Foundation. This is a male. Golden eagles, from what we can tell in most Western medieval and Renaissance courts, were mostly used as show-off pieces, or lawn ornaments as we call them. Here's the bird out in the weathering pen or the yard to get some weather. That's a term. I'm going to weather the bird. I'm going to take the horse out of the stall and put it in the pasture, kind of the same thing. There was actually very little hunting going on, but they were big and impressive, and they can be trained to sit on the fist nicely, and that is all well and good. The big exception are the nomadic cultures of Kazakhstan, China, Mongolia, Tajikistan, places like that in Central Asia, which, as we now know, is probably where falconry got him. Come on, bud. Originated. Anybody see or hear of a movie called The Eagle Huntress? Nope. Okay, a couple years ago, narrated by Daisy Ridley, played Rey in Star Wars. These guys hunt foxes. There we go. From horseback in the Altai Mountains in a manner pretty much unchanged for 4,000 or 5,000 years. They go to these huge ridge tops, and they have somebody called a scare boy or somebody down below running in the rocks or at the very edge of where the step meets the rocks to scare up a fox. And then the eagles, several hundred feet on the ridge, take off and kill the fox. You will see terrible faked and or set up stuff on YouTube that would have you believe that eagles kill wolves. It's very, very rare. Wolves are big and dangerous. The eagles know that. The foxes are a source of income for the family, as well as a symbol of wealth and clothing. This is something that Stalin tried to squelch and eliminate when the Soviet Union came into existence. Countries like Tajikistan, the former Soviet bloc, Kazakhstan, it has survived virtually unchanged. These guys trapped usually 2 or 3-year-old adult eagles out of the wild. They put a hood on them. They bring them into the yurt or the house. They train them. The eagles get to go out, watch another eagle do what I just described, and often within 10, 12 weeks, they're doing the exact same thing. The ones that do the real work are the horses. The horses carry the eagle, they carry the people, and it is basically not changed. They don't use any scales, which is the amazing thing. We weigh our birds every day. If the bird is too heavy and fed up, it will not come back to you for food. Oh, it's going to act like it wants to hunt. Yay, let's go hunting. Bait, bait, bait. Then it's going to go up in the tree and just sit there. You flush a rabbit. No, I'm not hungry. Swing the lure. Weight has everything to do with it. As I tell kids in my school programs, could you run a marathon if you hadn't eaten in 3 days? Could you run a marathon if you had just eaten a gallon of ice cream? There's hopefully a happy medium. Anyway, golden eagles are found around the world in the northern hemisphere. In the United States, they're found up here. They're found mostly west of the Mississippi. They actually have a very different mentality than bald eagles do. Any of you horse people will know different breeds have different characteristics. Golden eagles are like quarter horses or Morgans or golden retrievers and labs. They're very steady. They remember, they're calm, they're trainable. Bald eagles are like Arabians or Dutch warm bloods. You know, you don't work with them for 2 days. Who are you? So these guys are magnificent hunters. Jackrabbits, hares are their favorite food. In Wyoming, lots of eagles, lots of room, very few people. They have been known in late winter when most of the rabbits have gone to ground or are dead to take full-grown pronghorn antelope and mule deer. And in Central Eastern Europe, Slovakia, Slovenia, the Czech Republic, Hungary, they have eagle meets where the falconers get together, sometimes with goshawks, often with these guys or both, and they hunt roe deer. The roe deer are a little bit smaller than our whitetail. They tend to be very damaging to beet fields. It's highly organized, it's very expensive, but these guys catch roe deer. It's very, very, very impressive. Falconry is just handed down one person to another through this direct apprenticeship training program because we have the privilege of taking animals out of the wild animals, and we need to do right by them. So I could talk way, way, way more, but I want you guys to be able to ask some questions because I very quickly went over hunting. Falconry is one of those things where I thought it worked this way. So please, are we okay on time here, Hannah? Please throw out some questions about either the birds you've seen or anything I described.
How far can they see?
You mean like an eagle?
Yep.
Okay, so in color, probably the best, eyesight. A person, red shirt, 10 miles away. Up in the air, can see a rabbit, brown rabbit under a brown brush, a mile away. And if that rabbit twitches an ear, that's the other thing. Their ability to detect motion is much greater than ours. They're going to see that. That's what makes raptors so successful. If you point out a grasshopper in a dry field and walk 100 feet away, or maybe 20 feet away, depending on how big the evil thing is, just kidding. We love our grasshoppers. We need them for kestrels. You can see it, but it's going to be a whole lot easier to see it at a distance if you see the movement first. That's what raptors are so good at. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Your first bird, the hawk, the Harris hawk, you said you bred him in captivity to train him for these presentations.
The folks did, yeah. And
How did this fellow come into your program?
I did not mention that. He is the one wild bird. He was hit by a car. He is 24 years old. I was running out of time, so I wanted to cut to the chase. He is 24 years old. When he was just under 3, he was feeding on a dead white-tailed deer on I-90 outside of Livingston, Montana. Typical teenager, had the right idea, but flawed execution. He ate so much deer meat that he was too heavy to get off the ground in time. And a guy was just trying to get home to Idaho and hit him. Called 911, freaked out that this poor eagle was here. The sheriff said, if you were trying to get to Boise, you have to go through Bozeman. There is a raptor center there. Guy picked him up, brought him in. His right wing was dislocated at his shoulder joint. So, Peter, would you mind holding this for just 1 second? Super quick wing anatomy lesson. Birds have the same bones in their wings as we have bones in our arms, but the lengths are different. In birds, the humerus, this bone is very short. Hand, wrist. If he were wearing a watch, it would be here. This is his wrist. His elbow and his bad wing is here. Good wing is right here. He cannot raise his right wing all the way. Now, this was 20 plus years ago. When we first got him, it would have taken a very practiced eye. His wrist was much higher, but old age befalls the best of us here, and things sag and shift and stiffen up. In the wild, he would be dead. An average lifespan of a wild eagle is 20 to 25 years. Our last female golden eagle lived to 40. The eagle that he replaced was somewhere between 50 and 55 when he succumbed to West Nile virus. If it can happen to a human, it can happen to a person. So yes, he has come from the wild. We got him when he was 3.5 years old.
Are all,
Hang on just a second, please. Yes?
I got here a little late and I
Sure.
had the Harris hawk on. Did you mention Falconry with the Harris hawks? I know in the wild they hunt packs.
They do, or small groups. A pack makes it seem a little more X factor than it is. Yes, I did explain that. 4 to 5. They also raise their babies communally, you guys. Aunts, cousins, big brothers and sisters help. They have division of labor. There's some that are babysitting, some that sit on the perimeter of the flock and act as sentries and set up the alarm. They sit on the cactus. So yeah, they absolutely share family village life burdens together.
Will a falconer use 3 at the same time?
Yes, that's called a cast, flying in a cast, and yes, you can. 3 is a bit much, 2 is more typical. Yes, a male and a female are really good one of each gender for the hunting technique I described. Yes, sir.
You mentioned taking a bird from the wild. What's the process for that?
Oh, gosh. It depends on the species. It depends on the time of year. It's got to be less than a year old. We use a couple of different traps. One of them is a Pakistani design called a balshatri or a BC. It's basically kind of a cage of some shape, a Quonset hut or a square with a prey animal inside like a mouse. There's only certain species we're allowed to use for prey. You know, common house mice, things like that. English sparrows, which are not native. We put the critter in there, and it's covered by slip knots and a fishing line of a certain weight. And then you throw the trap out when you spot the hawk of the desired, hopefully, age and species, and it jumps down to grab the mouse and gets entangled in the noose. There's many, many different ways to do it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Are all of the females larger than the males in the raptors?
That's a good question. Are all of the females larger in the males than the raptors? No. There is one exception, and it's not a species or a group that we use. The New World vultures. So, you know, we have our turkey vultures here in the summer, and they're close relatives of the California condor. That's the family Cathartidae. New World vultures, North and South America. Totally different family than the vultures found in Asia, in Africa, and India. In the New World vultures, the males are slightly larger than the females. So the answer to the question is, what is the biggest raptor in the world by wingspan? It is going to be a male Andean condor, 10 feet. A male California condor averages 9.